come here today personally because I know all of you so well, and I know our guest speaker very well since I've been working with her since January, and I've discovered in the last 6 months that she is truly a very special person, and I wanted to personally come here and tell you that so you would take notice of her. Susan has an incredible resume. She was on the city council in St. Joe. She was the Buchanan County auditor. She's a great CPA. She's a talented lawyer. She's a loving mother. Her children are great debaters. She's a great debater. Her husband is a great debater. They were all on the debate team. Her son last week was in the high school national debate championship, so don't argue with her. You will not win. She is really a breath of fresh air to come to that state capitol. Listen, I've been there for 25 years. I've seen a lot of great Democrats come and go, and I've seen a lot of bad ones too, but Susan is really special, and she has a very bright future ahead. And another thing I want to say about her is that she's happy all the time. She's always smiling, and she is always pleasant to be around, except when some of our GOP enemies do things that we don't like, and then she's appropriately hostile towards them. But we are really so fortunate to have someone of her caliber be in high office. And with that, I will yield the floor to the State Auditor, Susan Montee.
He works for me, right? Very nice comment. Well, thank you guys. I'm so glad to be here. It has been 6 months, and I really love my job. So I want to thank you guys so much for helping put me there. I really appreciate it. I am kind of a glass is half full kind of optimist about everything, and I never did work in Jefferson City before. I had all of my career outside of that wonderful place, and so I came in thinking, well, you know what, it cannot be as bad as everybody says. And I really think that on the whole, our elected officials, wherever they are all trying to do the right thing. And they all believe in the trying to do the best for the taxpayers and trying to do the best for everybody involved. And so I thought, well, you know, we can put aside our differences, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to try to work with the Republican leadership and try to be friends with everyone. And, you know, it's gone okay, but I have to tell you that coming in with that attitude and that outlook, which I'm glad I still have, but I don't think I would have already made it 6 months if I didn't have Ken. And I just can't tell you how much it means to have Ken Jacob working for me, because, you know, when he talked about all of the years he has put in there, he does bring a reality check to sometimes the optimism that maybe I don't need to have in every instance, and so he's been a great protector of mine, and I think we're gonna be fine, because even though I'll go, how bad could they be? He always goes, don't trust them. Don't trust them. And so it's working pretty well. Every single time I say, well, let's just give them the benefit of the doubt. He says, well, let's think about that first. So it's going all right. Also with me in the auditor's office is Sean Spence, someone else you all know. Sean, of course, ran my campaign. And I think he did a fine job because we won. There we are. See? Sean is working part-time in my office too to try to help me make sure that we stay on the message that we're trying to have out there. And the message is that the auditor's office, of course, is trying to not be partisan and trying to just put out the facts for everybody to make decisions on, and to work for better government for everybody. And so I thought what I'd do today is just give you a little nutshell about what we've done over the 6 months that I've been there, and then just open it up and we can talk about anything you want to talk about. The first audit that we put out when I took office was on the First Steps program. And you might remember the First Steps program, because one of the first things that the governor did when he took office was try to cut that program. Luckily, there was a lot of outrage on that, and it got reinstated. And we actually then had done an audit on that program. And our audit said it's such a wonderful program that not only was it a good thing that we kept it for the state, but that we ought to fund it more. For those of you who don't know exactly what it is, it's for early learning, the under 3-year-olds, and that have some kind of disabilities. And what we found is that the criteria for acceptance into that program was at the 50% disabled category, and that was decided just purely by the amount of money they had. Since they only had this much money, they said, okay, how many people can we serve? And they said, well, we can serve the ones that are the most severely disabled. And the problem with that is the kids that are less than 50% are the ones that would benefit most from that program, and now can't get any kind of care and help until they're into our school program, and then we're having to have them in special ed. And what we found is that if we opened it up and took more of those children in, we might not have to have them in special ed at all by the time they hit the elementary program. And so those are the types of audits that we're trying to focus on and show how we can do things better in government. We've, of course, seen some really ugly things. Just a couple of weeks ago, we put out a annual report of all the audits that were done last year. Now, of course, those audits weren't mine. Those were Claire's audits. But when we talk about finding waste and fraud and abuse in government, it only takes picking up this one document and reading through the summary to know that every program out there has something wrong with it that we can improve. So then you go, well, gosh, it's so bad. Why are we even trying? Because what we do is we put out these audits and no one takes any notice of them. And no one makes any kind of changes. And we've had years worth of wonderful audit findings that no one has acted on. Now, I'm hoping, and here comes that optimism again, I'm hoping that because I'm new and because I don't have any previous experience in Jefferson City, that maybe some of the legislatures will be a little more open-minded to taking some of these audits and moving forward. And we are getting ready to put out a summary sheet to all the legislators about what legislative action could be taken based on prior audits under Claire. And for a change, then they don't have to worry about Claire taking credit for them, and so they can take credit for it, and maybe we can all do some good there. But it is somewhat disheartening when we look at some of these reports and go, gosh, what is going on here? The biggest problem area that we found since I came in was in the Riverview Gardens School District. And I don't know if any of you saw the reports on it, but it was a horrible, horrible situation where this school district had $12.5 million of reserves, and 2 years later, in the 2-year block that we audited, they were down to $1.6 million. Now that's under the level that puts them in crisis, in financial crisis. And at the same time, their test scores, they were passing 9 of the categories, and now they're down to 3, and the state just announced they were going to have to do a takeover of that district. We put our audit out in February, and it is horrible. The superintendent basically built the school out of this money. Not just him, though, but certainly the board let it happen, and the board participated. Over that 2-year period, they had $850,000 worth of travel, just the board and the superintendent. And then you had the alternative education programs for the kids that were higher need. There was a $2 million contract given to the superintendent's fiance, and we never found where any programs were ever offered. So those types of things are just, very, very disheartening when you come in. You go, well, what are we going to do about this? And in that instance, there, of course, are criminal charges, and the state's looking at a takeover, just like the St. Louis city. And those are the kind of things that make me go, well, all of these board members are elected too, and if we give everybody the benefit of the doubt that they're there to do the right thing, you just can't make it happen. You can't understand what happens. So that's why we just have to work to have better leadership and better oversight. And hopefully, I won't lose the upbeat attitude in looking at these things, and we'll keep trying to have oversight out there. We'll keep trying to put things out there. Now, we have several other things that we've looked at. One is the Workers' Compensation Second Injury Fund. Right now, it's on track to go insolvent in 2008. by the end of 2008. Now, that's a conservative estimate. Maybe it won't be until 2009. So, but one way or another, all parties, everyone agrees it's going to go insolvent. And without getting into why or, you know, how they screwed up when they passed those changes in '05, it's something that has to be fixed. This is a program that was put into effect to allow employers to share liability with the state for people that were coming back from World War II with injuries from the war. So these are disabled people, and in order for the employers to feel comfortable about hiring them and not be concerned about liability from injuries, we have this in place. Well, at a time where we've got a steady stream of returning disabled veterans coming back from a war, it's no time to let our fund go insolvent and to talk about cutting it. So we now are right in the middle of, you know, partisan bickering over whose fault was it, and how did these costs get high, and how did those costs get high, and we lose track. Sometimes the legislators totally lose track as to what the bottom line is. The bottom line here is our injured workers are at risk. And all I can say is that it isn't going to get any better unless we change our leadership. So even though, even though I'm going to do my best to work with the leadership that is in place there, I can tell you that we can do better, and we have to do better. And it isn't just the governor. I think that we all in this room know that we need to do something about the governor, and we need to change the governor. And we all know right now our best bet is Jay Nixon, and he's out there working, and I think he's going to do this. And I don't think we're going to have too much of this governor. But we all also have seen what happens when we have a Democratic governor trying to get things done with a Republican General Assembly. They had the House and the Senate under Bob Holden, and see what a struggle that was. And the problems that Bob Holden had weren't Bob Holden problems or decision problems. A lot of it had to do with every day he's just fighting to keep bad legislation from coming down on us. And now we know what it's like when there isn't someone out there fighting for us too. So yes, we need to change governors, but we also need to work really hard in these House and Senate races to try to take back these House and Senates. And not only knowing what a difference it will make just immediately for us down there, is keep in mind that we do have redistricting coming up, and we sure got to have at least one of those houses, or we've already seen that too. So, you know, you guys have seen it all, so I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But because I'm not running this year, I'm going to be out working very hard to try to work in some of the House and Senate races and try to do some things to help those candidates. And I just want everybody to kind of join me in that, because that's really, a lot of people understand how bad the governor issue is. And so there's a lot of people working to help get Jay Nixon elected, and we just need to make sure that we work on down the ticket too. So that's kind of what's my outlook now from the last 6 months and looking forward. So I'd like to just talk about anything that you guys want to talk about. Yes?
I understand that they started performance-based budgeting a year or so ago. I'm wondering what you're seeing, the results from that. Is there any difference between?
Yeah, see, I haven't looked into any of that at all. Of course, I came in with, we look at specific performance based on the statutes out there and how departments are supposed to be operating. The budgeting is a different area. When they're trying to set the budgets, we'd like to come in and do these performance audits in order to affect people's budgets, and we're doing that, but not in the way that would have an immediate effect on the budgeting. They're supposedly be doing it that way. When I came in to defend our budget this year, was of course my first real hands-on the budget, and it's difficult. They don't understand. They put it out there that, you know, here's your budget, and tell me why you can justify this and what you've done, but you know that the people working on it don't really understand. Especially, you get the changes every day. They've already cut people's budgets down, and then up until this year, you know, the state workers hadn't been getting raises in our department and in departments across the the board on the state level, they're losing employees and unable to fill them because of, the wages. Now, this year, there's been a wage change. People did get raises, and maybe it'll be easier to do some of that, but I haven't been hands-on on any of that. Yeah. Yes?
How do you decide what programs or agencies to audit? Who initiates that, or can citizens influence that process?
Yes, they can. I actually have full discretion over deciding where to go and what to look at. With the exception of, we have to do the counties. We do all of the third and fourth class counties, and we have them on a rotating basis because we have to get there once every 4 years. Outside of that, when it comes to the boards or commissions or any other entity, we have full discretion. So if there is a problem with an entity that we have the authority to audit, if we get tips. We sometimes come in because of that. One example of that is, of course, we're going to be starting an audit of the Department of Agriculture as soon as the budget year ends. So sometime in the next couple of months, we'll start that. Well, we decided to put that audit in there because of the issues that came up with the Department of Agriculture, the sexual harassment charges, the money's being paid out of one fund to try to pay that claim without being the right fund, just some red flags about how the department was operating. We said we need to come in and audit that. And we looked back at our audit chart, and we had not been in there for a number of years. So we will pull in audits based on something happening. That's kind of how, that's an interesting thing because it's one of these things that I talked about during the campaign when people would talk about how Claire McCaskill would do all of her audits on political motivation. Well, she didn't do them because she was motivated by something other than it became a hot issue. If something happened and it was something under her jurisdiction, she'd say, we got to look at this right now. And she looked at it right now because there's a problem right now. Everybody's talking about it right now. It's more likely to get some change. So we try to be flexible enough that if something comes up, like the Department of Agriculture, we can put it in there. Now, if there are entities, one more thing, if there are entities that we don't have jurisdiction over, like cities or school districts or water districts or any other political subdivision, that can be initiated by petition. Signatures of the voters can bring us in, and then we're required to come in and do those. So, yes, sir?
Do you have any responsibility for auditing the National Guard?
Okay, and see, that's interesting because we've been looking at this. When all of this attention was being paid to the equipment of the National Guard, we wanted to come in and do an equipment audit of the National Guard. In fact, we know that we have Kit Bond out there saying we only have 33% of our equipment. And we do know that our National Guardsmen are taking the equipment with them and then they're coming back without it. Of course, some of it was old and stuff anyway. The problem with that is that the equipment is purchased by the federal government. And so while we can come in and we can ask questions, we can't fully get to the bottom of it. So we do audit various portions of the National Guard, but our really concern right now is the equipment. And as soon as we figure out how to get the answers we need, we're going there. So, yeah.
Did you audit the St. Louis School District at all?
We did not. And that's another one of those school districts, like the Riverview Garden School District. We were there because the governor requested it. They couldn't get the signature, so the governor gave us authority. We did audit the St. Louis School District a number of years ago, and of course it was in shambles on a financial basis, and I'm sure that if they ask us to come in again, we'll probably find that again. Yes? Yes?
How cooperative are the agencies when you come in to do the audit?
Not as cooperative as I would like them to be. But that said, here's an example of I'm the new kid in town, and kid, right? Okay, I'm the new person in town, and I'm trying to make nice with everyone, and I'm trying to get along with everyone. And of course, Claire was somewhat feared. She came in as she was a prosecutor, and no one really messed with her, and people generally cooperated with her to some extent. Me, however, I come in and try to be nice. All of a sudden, it's like a child testing the boundaries, and we're trying to audit Mohila, and And in fact, they wouldn't cooperate with us, and so we sued them. You know, we got Ken, we're gonna sue people, you know? So, that actually, we actually are going forward with that lawsuit right now. We sued them for the information. They counter-sued us to say that we didn't have the authority to ask for all their stuff, and it's going to court this summer. So, we'll see. We're not gonna let them push us around, so, yes.
You seem to be implying that some of your activities are reactive rather than proactive. Is that a resource issue, and what do you need in terms of resources?
Yes, it is a resource issue. And we are currently, we are working very hard to have, you know, a proactive stance. And like the Mohila audit, we knew that we were gonna do that as soon as we came in. And there are some audits that we started because, you know, we knew we wanted to do them. One of our initiatives was a safe school initiative. You know, we went ahead and put that in place. That said, those of course were somewhat reactive too. We wouldn't have known that Mohila was going to be a problem, but for trying to sell off the assets. We have a little timeline of how long it's been since we've gone into certain boards and commissions, and so we've got some of these entities in place, and we are doing those, but we try to have enough leeway in our audit plan so that we can react to things. And so at any given time, we've got 50 audits going on. So it isn't that we're only doing the ones that something comes up on. We actually have ongoing audits all of the time too, that are just the various boards and commissions and licensing and those types of things too.
Well, just as a follow-up then, are you saying that the legislature can essentially shut down your voice?
No, here's what we have. We have a lack of resources, not because the legislature hasn't given us enough budget. We've got some of these issues with not being able to attract enough people, and that isn't just state government, although it's a problem in state government, but it's a problem in the accounting profession. There are fewer and fewer accounting grads, and then the rules now have, to sit for a CPA exam, you have to have 150 undergraduate hours. Well, you only need like 124 to graduate. So basically, we've made becoming a CPA require a 5-year degree. And so when people come out that are looking for a CPA track, there's so many fewer of them that they get snapped up by the private sector. So we are always struggling to get more people in and do more things with less. In addition to that, they've changed so many of the auditing rules to put more burdens on an auditor to find things because of, you know, the whole Enron and these scandals. They say, well, you need to be also looking to see if people working in the place are living beyond their means, you know, things like that. You can't look under every rock, and we're trying. One thing that we're going to start, and we're going to actually start it later this year, is more some of these limited scope audits. There are courts, municipal courts that we haven't been in for a dozen years or more. And we know that that's a problem area. So we are taking these municipal courts and we're going to run out. We used to do them all. We have to do the whole circuit, so it made it a really big audit. We're breaking it up now. When we've got a couple of people free for a couple of weeks, we're sending them out to audit that municipal court. And they'll do kind of a limited scope. And if they don't see any problems, any major red flags, then we'll say, you know, looks okay from the surface and go on down the road and do another one. Otherwise, we end up with something like happened in Springfield Municipal Court where, you know, they've got over $1 million missing out of their municipal court, and we're in there doing the audit now. So we're trying to proactively go out and do some small-scale audits and small audits, so try to stop things before they happen. Yes, sir.
In the process of doing fiscal audits on the different organizations, if your office makes a determination that it's not a fiscal problem but in fact legislative, can the office make recommendations for statute change?
We do. And we try hard not to tell them what the change should be, but give them enough guidance so they can decide it on their own. And in doing that, what we'll say is, here's a problem. And it's a problem because the law is vague, or it lets them do this, or there's not a requirement in the statute. And so our recommendation is the General Assembly should look at this and see if they can correct it kind of thing. We try to not tell them the step to take, although it's clearly implied. And when I was talking earlier about putting together a packet that we're gonna give to the legislators, we're hoping to have that ready by October. We are pulling all of those General Assembly recommendations out of the last, 4 or 5 years worth of audits and packaging them together and giving them to the General Assembly so they can see that these are some areas that we already isolated a problem and maybe they can make a change to it.
So you're not doing recommended language in the,
No, because I think that's overstepping our authority a little bit. I mean, we can tell them that the statute is a problem and the General Assembly ought to fix it, but if we start handing them about, language for their bills, they're gonna say, quit trying to legislate from the auditor's office, so, yeah. Yes?
Recently in the press here, there were some questions about how people get Missouri Housing Development Commission grants.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an awful lot of money that comes from HUD to them, and then how those are handed out. We've also, with our organization, had some questions about this. So are you looking at MHDC, or
Yes.
has it been looked at recently?
Yeah, let me tell you what's happening with that. When I came into office in January, we had an audit going on the housing credits, the tax credits. But at the same time then, the treasurer calls a task force to take testimony on this. And the governor says, well, we're gonna have someone looking into this and get this report. So we put our audit on hold. And it's been probably about a week ago that first report from one of those other groups came out. And we take that and we're gonna try to work that into, we're now back on the audit. And then to have this letter of business from, from Springfield come up and, we're taking all that, and since we'd already initially done most of the field work, on the audit and on the credits themselves, now we can incorporate this other stuff. So I anticipate our audit on that will be coming out later this year. And on a kind of a related note, just a different program, but the DREAM initiative, I don't know if you guys know the downtown revitalization. We did when we were doing an audit of some of the programs, we did an audit that included that program and what we found, and we put this out, and we're hoping that they will look at that. But here's what they did. They set up 3 independent groups to evaluate the cities, and then they came back with, here's 10 cities that we recommend. And there were, 10 cities basically that had unanimous approval from all of the groups, and then that went forward and would have been the 10 cities, and then at the last minute, 2 of those cities got yanked and 2 other cities got substituted in that did not have the unanimous approval. And there was no record anywhere or discussion minutes or anything as to how that happened. What we do know is that one of the city administrators from one of those cities that got put in was, a former member of the staff of, the governor's staff or something like that. And the other one was as a lobbyist, Jewel Patek is a lobbyist, and, not to go into all of these interrelationships, but there were some reasons that people were pushing for those cities. But the problem is that, every single one of these programs becomes suspect if we don't put out why we're doing it and what we're doing, and maybe they had legitimate reasons for substituting these cities in, but no one knows. They wouldn't tell us as a part of our audit, and they didn't put it out in writing, and so we can all just speculate, well, maybe it's this or maybe it's that, and those are the types of things that make citizens not trust the government. And so we're looking at that, and as a part of the housing tax credit, we're gonna look at that as well, because, now it's even been in the papers, and we knew some of that was going on.